I'm Brennan Mejia, and I play Tyler, the Red Dino Charge Ranger, and you're listening to the Lightning Collective podcast, hosted by Callum. It's about to get wild!
Hello and welcome to the Lightning Collective podcast. I'm your host Callum, and it was San Diego Comic-Con last week. I thought it would be a fun idea to bring on a prop craftsman who not only supplies cosplayers, but also rangers themselves. His name is Rich, also known as SG Mechanics, or Mechanic rather. Already got your name wrong. That's fantastic.
That's
Hello,
okay.
Rich. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. I'm good.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. You know what? I know nothing about cosplay or anything that goes into it. I've always been very interested. Yeah, I've just never dipped my toes in it, so I'm excited to ask you, all of the questions that I got planned. But before that, so I'm recording this actually a week before you listen to this, so I will do the news in the future and insert it. But Psycho Green has appeared in Walmart, weirdly. Makes no sense because it's supposed to be a Hasbro exclusive. People thought it was fake to begin with, but it seems to be appearing. I don't know why, but everywhere else in the world, we've got no news or anything, so we're just waiting for that. Staying with the Lightning Collection, Chase, the Dino Charge Black Ranger, has just randomly appeared in Target as an exclusive. Again, people thought that it was like a really well-made custom, but it's not. In the UK, it has appeared in Smith's, which don't typically stock Lightning Collection. So, again, that's very strange, but if you're in the UK, go and find it in Smith's. If you're in the USA, go to Target and find it. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but, if people know where they are, then please do reach out to me, and then through Twitter, I will then share that news with everyone else. Lord Draken Evolution 3 appears to be the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive for this year, but obviously because San Diego Comic-Con has been and gone, it's now a Hasbro Pulse exclusive. In the UK, I believe it'll be like last year, sort of like a general convention release or a sort of like a specialist store release. Moving on to comics, the Boom Studio panel at San Diego Comic-Con unveiled a black Time Force Ranger. Her name is Chloe. I haven't seen the stream, so forgive me if I'm saying her name wrong. And Boom Studios have said that Chloe will have an axe to grind with Wes and Jen, so I would imagine she may be the secondary villain. Moving on to video games, there is a skin for MMPR Black in Legacy Wars. It's the Omega Black Ranger, which makes perfect sense. I have a feeling, I don't know, but I have a feeling it's probably a battle pass, or I think they call it a power pass, like a power pass exclusive. So if you do want that skin, you will have to pay, I believe it's £5 to £7. And again with the Legacy Wars, the Green Samurai Ranger from Ninja Storm has appeared in the game, or is going to appear. No word yet on when he's appearing, but keep an eye out and they will release a date for that. Hasbro also sneakily put up promotional shots of their Dino Megazord from MMPR. It's sort of like a, not basic, but a cheaper Megazord where they're 2 packs. It's the Mastodon Megazord and Pterodactyl Megazord in 1 pack, then the Saber-tooth Tiger and Triceratops. And then the T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus is on its own. Each pack is $15. Keeping with basic lines, people have found a listing on Target, and it's for like a 3 basic figure pack. It's got the MMPR Red Ranger, the Dino Charge Pink Ranger, and the Dino Thunder Blue Ranger. They all look pretty good. Pink is missing a few paint apps, but I think overall they're really nice and they're quite cheap, so if you do like the basic line, then go straight ahead with that. And that's the news for this week. If I've missed anything, then please tweet me at PRL Collective. I'm trying my best to keep up with it. Please bear with me while I do that. But anyway, back to the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get on to the interview or just chat. How did you get into this niche?
I'll give you the long story, I guess. So my background's in engineering, and when I was in grad school, we had a 3D printer in the lab, and 3D printers just always kind of intrigued me. Basically, we had what's called a filament deposition method 3D printer. So it's basically a spool of plastic, and almost like a hot glue gun, it goes through a hot tip, and then it just lays down layer by layer by layer. So picture taking a hot glue gun and just doing layer by layer and building it up that way. After engineering school, I went on to a regular engineering job, and on the side, my wife and I decided we were going to make cosplays. So we ended up making our first Power Morphicon cosplays, and it's kind of a funny picture if you ever see my Instagram. We have these giant helmets, and they're basically bobbleheads. And they were made out of what's called peppercorah. So picture almost like a paper mache. You print out a template, you cut them out, and then you glue them together, and you hit them with fiberglass resin, and then you paint them. Between the first Power Morphicon that we went to, which was in 2016, and then the Power Morphicon in 2018, I ended up getting my hands on a 3D printer and setting it up in my basement. And I was always printing like little knickknacks. I have like a baby Groot that just sits on the mantle. And I ended up deciding that we were going to try and 3D print our cosplays. So I actually 3D printed a Black Ranger helmet, and I wore it to Power Morphicon, and I 3D printed my wife a bow and a shoulder pad, and she wore those to Power Morphicon. And that's kind of when me and her kind of looked at each other and said, hey, we could actually maybe do this for other people. So that's kind of the general idea on how I ended up in it. I kind of fell into it. It wasn't even something I was necessarily looking for.
That's always the way, I suppose, isn't it? You'd sort of do something and then you realize, oh, I actually enjoy this and, I can sort of spread my wings almost.
Yeah, and what's great is it marries, my wife went to school for art. She went to Massachusetts College of Art. I went to school for engineering, and I always had an artsy kind of side to me. And this kind of marries the two of them together, right? I have my art that I design it, and then I have my engineering side, which is kind of the 3D printer and tinkering side, and we bring those together to make these costumes for people.
Yeah, so it's a perfect mix essentially. You sort of discovered your artistic side, or maybe well, you already had it, but you couldn't really apply it to your day-to-day job. So you
Exactly.
then applied it to the prop making, which is great. So with 3D printing, for people that don't know, there are many different types of materials, but the one that you use, do you get because I know some you do and some you don't. Do you get the layer effect or is yours quite clean?
Yeah, so it's kind of a loaded question. And the reason why I say that is it really depends on what printer you're using, and they all have a layered effect to them somewhat. So I use the FDM method. Again, that's the filament deposition method. And that's why you get the layered effect. So it's literally building layer by layer by layer on top of the layer down below. So I do get the layered effect. We sand it out and we hit it with primer and spot putty in order to get rid of that layer effect. So if you look at the finish on some of the props, it's hard to believe that they're 3D printed. Now, if you were to use a resin 3D printer, which those are much more expensive, I'm looking at one now that I've started to get into this more, but those you wouldn't see as much of that layering effect just because of the resolution that they can do what they call the Z step, so the height. Because of the resolution they can do that in, you avoid a lot of that layering. As soon as you paint it, it's basically gone for the most part.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because I know someone who does have a resin printer, and he also says that it's crazy amounts of money, but yeah,
They're
it's pretty much
they're
ready to go, I suppose, when you
y-
paint it. So
yeah, and they're starting to get more affordable now. I think you can buy one for about 500 US dollars now. That's a decent size. But the printer that I have, the reason why I went the filament deposition method, and again, I bought this probably 3, 4 years ago. I can print a full size helmet on it without having to cut it. So that's why I went down that path. I'd rather do the post work and have the ability to just sit there while my helmet prints versus the pre work of cutting it and having to go through it that way. It's a trade-off.
If it works for you, then that's good. What's your workflow like? How do you create stuff from helmets to spiral sabers?
You'd be surprised. It's kind of almost like, I don't want to say a basic process, but it is in a way. Usually what I've been doing is I've been watching the show, whether it's the Sentai footage, meaning the Japanese footage, or it's a US Power Ranger show, and I've been taking screenshots of that. And what I do is I take that screenshot and I'll put it into a program. So it depends on what I'm modeling, what program I use. Something like the Spiral Saber, I use more of a mechanical program, meaning like Fusion 360. So that's something like you'd see like an engineer probably use. And what I do is I literally go in and I trace the shapes over those images in the computer program, and then I just give them a thickness. It's kind of a funny story. I remember when I first started that Spiral Saber, that was my first real big prop that I did myself. I was watching Power Rangers and I was pausing it and taking literally photos of my TV with my cell phone and emailing them to myself and putting them in the program. I remember my wife walking in and being like, "What are you doing? I don't even want to ask." And she just like walked out of the room and kept doing whatever she was doing. And
Yeah.
lo and behold, all of a sudden I look at her one night and I'm like, "By the way, I'm making a Spiral Saber for Chris." She just looks at me and is like, "What?" So what I do is I take those photos, I trace over them. I have a friend, actually he's in the UK as well, and he does modeling for video games actually, so he's a really good critiquer of these models. So I'll do multiple iterations of it and just send it to him. He'll critique it and send it back to me, and I'll make a change. And then what I end up doing is after I'm finally done with the model, I'll export it to an STL and I'll send it over to my printer. There's what's called a slicing software. A lot of people who do 3D printing use Cura. That's what I use as well. And you put the model into that, and it cuts it and puts out a G code, and that G code is what goes to the 3D printer. A lot of people know CNCs now, and it's basically a CNC, but instead of removing material, it's adding material. After I get the G code, it's printing it, and something like the Spiral Saber probably takes week and a half to print. I actually cut that into 3 pieces because it's so big, and I put threads on it. So there's 3D printed threads on it, and you can thread it together. After that's done, so I do a lot of waiting during that time. Usually I'll be working on another model or taking care of some stuff around the house during that time. And after that's done, we take it and we sand it and we prime it, and then we hit it with some spot putty to get rid of those layer lines, right? So the primer will hide some of the layer lines, but not all of them. And when it's printing, it's not perfect because it's literally melting plastic. So sometimes you'll get little blobs that have to be sanded off, or you'll have little divots where they shouldn't be divots. So you can hit that with some spot putty. And then you prime it and you go through the painting process after you're done doing the sanding and priming, which that's probably the longest step, is the sanding and priming, other than the modeling, right? So the sanding and priming takes forever. We may spend 2 to 3 weeks on one prop. And it's
Wow.
not constant. It's not with us sitting there, all day. I have 2 kids, so I usually let them run around the backyard. And sometimes I could be out there for, 3-4 hours sanding, priming, sanding, priming, waiting for it to dry in between. It's really the dry time that kills it, right? If I could do it all sitting at one time, it would be okay. But after that, we end up taking it and we paint it. Honestly, my wife does a lot of the painting. I'll do the base coats, and I don't have the patience for masking. So she'll take literally like blue masking tape and mask off the different sections and paint it with a spray can. And then we clear coat it. It's usually ready to go by that point.
I wasn't expecting the sanding and priming to take so long, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think if I wasn't if this was my sole job, I probably could get it done quicker, but it's not my sole job, so I end up usually taking 2 to 3 weeks for it. I'm also very nitpicky. So we've had times where my wife has come in and said, "Hey, how's this look?" And I said, let's go back and hit it with some more spot putty." And
Yeah.
she's like, "But it looks fine." But I'm also very, very, very nitpicky.
I mean,
Probably,
sorry, I was
pro-
just going to say it does make
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, probably more than I should be, to be honest with you. I'm probably way more nitpicky than I should be. But my eyes is they're paying for this. So what I always look at it as, would I want something that has a small imperfection if I just paid, $250 for it? And usually the answer is no. So that's
It,
kind of how I decide.
it's good that you're looking out for your customer base though, and you're not settling for mediocre quality.
Yeah,
That's really good. That's really
it,
good.
it,
Whereas,
it's
you know,
it's funny that you say that, because I've had a lot of people say to me that my props have a lot more detail and a lot better of a finish than other people's, and I've never really taken the time to critique other people's work. That's not really what I'm in it for. I'm really just in it to do what I like to do. But I've had quite a few people reach out to me and say that. In fact, they asked me to make something for one of their customers. Well, let me rephrase that. One of my customers asked me to make something for an actor that they felt was subpar that someone else made. And that's kind of when it really made me wake up that, like, wow, okay, apparently I do take a lot more time to do this.
that's crazy though. That someone reached out to you and they got a prop or whatever from someone else, and it wasn't the quality that they thought they were receiving.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's mental to me. This is your work at the end of the day, and if you're not, putting out your best, I mean, I know that it's not your full-time job, but I mean, like,
no, but
doing
it's your
stuff like
name.
this, yeah,
It's your name associated with it.
yeah, it's your
So,
reputation, and it's mad to me that
right,
people are putting their reputation on the line for a, I mean, it's not really a quick buck, or maybe it is. I don't know what these other guys, their processes are. I have no
right,
idea, but it's just crazy to me that they are risking their reputation, especially for people who see a lot of fans.
right.
But yeah, no, it's great that your quality's there. It's fantastic. But we need to talk about the elephant in the room here, because we've mentioned him a few times now, but we haven't discussed how you met him. That's Christopher Kamen Lee. How did you meet him?
So this is actually a really funny story. Mike Jin, so he was Gold RPM, in case you didn't know that. He live streams on Twitch, or he used to. I don't know if he's really doing it anymore. I was watching him play one night, and he was playing, I think it was Red Dead Redemption. He would play with his viewers. I logged on and I started playing. Next thing I know, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption with him. I'm playing Red Dead Redemption with Christopher Kamen Lee. I'm playing Red Dead Redemption with David Fielding. So I kind of, my video gaming got me in contact with them, which is really kind of funny because it wasn't supposed to result in me, doing props. But one thing led to another, and I ended up, playing pretty often with them. More so Chris. Mike would be there occasionally, and I became friends with Chris and his friend Rando. Rando worked with Chris on his comic book front. They would always talk about, where did you see Andros after the series? When they would talk about this, it was almost like a fan fiction in their eyes. But they wrote like this whole entire storyline. Rando came up with concept art. And one day Rando goes to me, hey, don't tell Chris, but is there a chance you can make me this spiral saber? Because they end up catching wind that I was doing 3D printing. Now, ironically, I was already working on the spiral saber because I had a friend who had the toy from Japan, but he wanted a life-size one. I ended up taking Rando's concept art and I ended up making what I think they called it the Spiral Reaver. And that's that black and red spiral saber you see on my Instagram and in the promotional photos for Bloodline for the Grid. And what's really funny about that whole situation is I never even knew that was going to be used in Bloodline. That just kind of popped up on my newsfeed one day. And I remember going to my wife and saying, hey, guess what? You know that spiral saber we made? Yeah, they're using it in the movie.
We need to talk about what you said earlier, though. You started playing with not only Christopher Kamen Lee, but also Zordon himself. I never
Yeah.
pictured the man as a gamer, I'm gonna be honest.
No, it's so funny that you
What?
say that because I felt exactly the same way. I was like, they kept saying, oh, Dave, Dave, Dave. And then I was like, this guy sounds an awful lot like Zordon. And he does. It's funny because he'll every now and then, like during the game, he'll just like do the voice, like Zordon wouldn't want his guys behaving like that. You know what I mean? Things like that, little
Yeah.
one-liners. It really made me crack up. Yeah, I never pictured Dave Fielding as a gamer either, and he's really he was really into Red Dead actually. I remember logging on. So they were all on the West Coast, right? I don't know where Dave Fielding lives, but they were all on the West Coast. Dave, I think, was somewhere in the mid of the US. I remember logging on and Dave was on gaming. And it was like 8 a.m. my time, and I'm on the East Coast.
That's
So
mad.
yeah.
What's funny story? Ethan, who was on the show for its first episode, in his phone, he has got the communicator noise, the dud, 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 dud. So he's
Yep.
got that for me for my ringtone, so that when I'm calling him, that pops up, and I'm also called Zordon in his phone. I don't know how it came up, but it happened in college. I think he just found it on his phone, and he knew that I was really big into Power Rangers when I was younger. I wasn't back into Power Rangers at that point, but I spoke of it fondly enough to the point that he called me Zordon in his phone, and
That's funny.
it became a running joke that every time I called him, I would say Rangers Rooters attacked. Yeah, so, but yeah, no, it just never struck me that David. So yeah, no, that must have been like 5 a.m. his time then, right? If you're 8 a.m.
I'm not sure because I don't think he lives on the West Coast,
Oh, okay.
but it was still pretty early.
Yeah, no, that's mad. You know, maybe he does all-nighters, who knows?
I don't know.
But anyway, moving on from David, what props have you crafted so far? Because judging by your Instagram page, it's still early days for you. You know,
Yeah.
as this is part-time, I suppose, a little side project. What stuff have you created so far?
Yeah, so I do a lot of Ranger stuff. On my page, you can see the original helmet I ever made, which is my Mastodon helmet. I ended up cosplaying as Mastodon Pink from the Power Rangers Pink comic with my wife. I'll come back to that. There's a funny story behind that too. And then we got the Spiral Saber. I've done a Hyperforce green helmet for a customer. I didn't actually model that one. He sent me the file. He bought the file off somebody, but we spent a lot of time and we made it actually clicks together, so it's got magnets inside, so it's a clean finish. And then I'm working on a Hyperforce blue. Actually, you can see the early stages of the model in there on my Instagram. One of my more favorite ones, because I think it's overlooked a lot, is the Tiger Baton. I think that's from Power Rangers Wild Force. It was for the White Ranger. Other than that, getting out of Power Rangers, I've done a Mandalorian helmet. I did a lightsaber. Now, earlier I was kind of talking about the different softwares. So a lot of those previous props were either done in Fusion 360, or if they were more artsy, like the Hyperforce helmets, those would have been done in what's called ZBrush, which I think Hasbro uses for their figures. And then the lightsaber, that was actually just a tutorial I was doing for myself in Blender before I jumped into ZBrush. I just wanted to try out something else. Yeah, I mean, it is early stages. That's what I have to offer, but I do a lot of custom orders too. So right now I have a Ho-Oh shield, which is from Q Ranger. That's the Super Sentai. I have a Korag sword and shield in process. So those should be coming out around November sometime, hopefully.
The last two that you mentioned, are they for customers or are they just?
They were a customer request. So I always wanted to do a Korag sword and shield, but the Ho-Oh sword and shield was a request. So those were a request from customers. But usually the way I do it is I do the model myself. I'll provide the customer with the 3D print, but then I'll offer that model because at that point it's just doing the finishing work. So I'll list that model on my site in the images, and you'll know that I offer that through the images.
You mentioned you do other things other than Power Rangers. We'll just talk about them for a minute. On your Instagram page, you mentioned, or you didn't mention, you showed a Mandalorian helmet. Are there other Star Wars projects that you're working on?
Yes, on there is just a generic lightsaber, but I'm a really big fan of Star Wars Rebels. I've been eyeing Ezra Bridges. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he had a lightsaber that was a blaster too. And I've been eyeing that, and I wanted to buy one. I decided that I'm going to put it on my list, and I'm going to model it for myself. So I'm going to model an Ezra Bridges lightsaber, 3D print that for myself. My wife actually went to school with a kid who does metal casting, so I might end up metal casting that for myself too. I will not offer that to people, but I just thought that was kind of cool.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, so I thought it would be really neat to have a metal lightsaber that I made.
Yeah. With the metal, would it then be a chrome finish?
I'm not sure. I don't know that much about that kind of work. I'd have to talk to him. I don't know what his capabilities are.
Yeah, no, that would be cool.
Yeah, that's really early stages. Like that's just concept idea right now. But that is on my list.
Awesome, because with the Bridger lightsaber, or his first lightsaber, should I say? Because he gets a new one later on. Quite a lot of the, I don't want to say custom, but like the third party, if I can even call them that, their lightsabers, they look too thick, and the ones that are thinner, that I would say are live action worthy, they cost a lot of money. Like a lot. I'm talking like £500 ish.
Yeah. That's a good thing sometimes about going with a 3D print versus like a cast or a metal. You know, you can keep the pricing down because a roll of filament only cost me like, $20 or so. The rest of it's just elbow grease.
Moving back on to Power Rangers. So you mentioned earlier that you get customer requests. Is there anything, are you open to doing anything in the Ranger world, or are you keeping your, I don't want to call you a restaurant because you're not obviously, but are you keeping your menu quite limited at the minute?
I'm Italian, so I like food, so I'm okay with the word menu. Um, I'm open to other requests. I've never really done an armor set, which would be kind of cool to do, like a dragon shield or something like that. I'm not sure if 3D printing is necessarily the best choice for that. I know a lot of people make that out of foam, but I'm actually starting to look into casting in the sense of if, especially with the spiral saber, right? I get a lot of requests for the spiral saber. What I would do is make a mold, and I actually have the material. I just haven't done it yet. Make a mold and then do like some sort of casting. I don't know what kind of casting to use yet, but maybe like a rubber. And you might be able to do like a flexible shield out of that. I'm open to other requests. People would just have to work with me if it's not like a helmet or a weapon, or I should say a prop. I shouldn't call it a weapon. But
Okay.
I'm open. I'm really flexible and open. The way I kind of work it is I'm so flexible that I just tell people like, "Hey, this is what the price is and you can do installment payments or you can wait and pay me at the very end." Because it's my side, I'm just doing it on the side. Yeah, it's not my sole source of income. So as long as people are flexible with me, I'm flexible with them.
It's really nice that you offer different forms of payment. Well, not really forms of payment, but ways of paying. Because I know, well, I don't know, but I have a feeling that a lot of other people or places, it's all up front. And if you're not
Yeah.
happy with it, then you can't really do much afterwards.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who've required down deposits, and I don't even do that. I just say, hey, let's, if I can get it ready and you can pay me just before I ship it, that's fine.
You answered one of my questions, which was, are you open to doing armor sets? So I'll skip that one.
Okay,
But,
all right.
is there any Power Rangers object that you really want to do that you haven't yet?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. I don't know if you're a fan of the comics or not, but the
That's
Psycho
how I got
Green.
back into it.
So yes,
Yeah.
the Psycho Green dagger. I want to do that one. That's on my list. The Hyperforce Megazord I want to do for the Renegade Studios board game. I've always wanted to make the Spiral Saber actually functional. So I guess this is kind of not really so much a new model. I want to put like a little motor in it so it could spin. So that'd be kind of cool too. What else? Oh man, I have a list. I think we kind of talked about this, but I'm doing the Lights of Orion. It's a glove with a claw. This wasn't my idea. This was someone else's, but I do want to still do it. It's supposed to extend and retract. They want it to be functional, so that's something on my list that I would like to do. I really want to do your announcer there, Brennan Mejia. I want to do his T-Rex fist. I don't know what they call that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
His weapon, yeah. I don't know what
yeah.
it's called, but I want to do that. I want to model that. I think that would be really neat too. So as you can see, I have quite a list.
Yeah. Would you, with the Spiral Saber and the Lights of Orion, I don't know if it's got an actual name, but the claw thing probably does have a name, and I'm probably going to get
That's
an
fine.
angry
It's the claw thing.
something. Yeah, the claw thing. Are you looking into mechanics for that or electronics for that?
No, I will be. I haven't quite started yet. My plan is probably something with a stepper motor and an Arduino board for some of those people out there who like to tinker. But I haven't gone in depth yet.
You also mentioned the Hyperforce Megazord for the board game. For people that don't know,
Yes.
the board game it's one of the more expensive ones because you've got the figurines. It's not Power Rangers as a brand's fault. It's just the nature of that industry, I suppose. Everything, if it's got a figurine involved, it's just crazy money because a lot of people like to paint them up and, all of that. How much would you be looking? Because I know that the Megazord, I think, goes for like 30 to 50 pounds. I know that's a wide range of
Oh, yeah.
pricing. I don't know exactly how much it is.
Yeah.
What would you be looking to charge people for? Because they're about what, like 6 to 8 inches, right? I think.
I think so, yeah. That, because it's for that board game, and they were so good about putting that board game out and staying with the community, I'm thinking I would list it on Thingiverse for free. So if you had a printer, you could print it. I'd probably contact Renegade Studios with the model and see if they're willing to cast it, to be honest with you. Let them do their molding to it. I'm not looking to do that one to make money. I'm more so looking to do that one just because it's something I want. I'm a really big fan of the Hyperforce arc. If you haven't listened to it, you definitely should. It's very good. And because of that, I kind of want to give back to the community a little bit with that. So if I ever do model that, that one would be listed for free. If somebody wanted me to print it, I'd probably just charge them, $20 or something like that. But I wouldn't charge for the file or anything like that. And I'd really like to see if Renegade would take the model and run with it, because that would be fantastic.
That would be really cool.
So I guess I didn't really answer your question, to be honest with you, but I wouldn't want to sell that. I wouldn't want to take that away from Renegade. You know what I mean? They've
Yeah.
done a lot of work on that board game, and I'm not looking to steal anybody's business necessarily. That board game, I played it once, and it's fantastic. My wife and I actually have all the expansions, and I just want to get back to the community. They've done a lot of work with that, and they actually value the community's input on it.
Yeah, Renegade are doing a really good job. And I don't know how, because the board game came out last year, right? And they've done already 2 expansions. One's coming out soon. I
Oh
don't know,
man,
Legend Rise of the Psycho Rangers.
there's a lot for it actually. They did a Zeo, they did a Shattered Grid expansion, they did Allies. They have an Allies pack that just came out with Doggy Kruger. There's a lot. They did a
Oh wow,
lot.
okay.
I don't know if they were officially released. They might have just been through their Kickstarter. I think they might be coming out.
I think the last set to release was the Zeo pack,
Okay.
I believe. Don't quote me though. That's cool that you're not only venturing into cosplay, but you're also maybe going to venture into the board game side of it, but as a
Yeah.
non-profit. I think that's a really nice idea, and maybe getting Renegade on board would really, I suppose, strengthen the community, because then that shows that they're open to community requests. So I would imagine you're not the only one that really wants that Hyperforce Megazord. There's probably a load of people,
Yeah.
because when Shepherd's Grid came out, it was just the Hyperforce team, so it was just the 5 of them. I don't know if Hyperforce Green was a part of that. I don't remember.
No, Hyperforce Green was not, unfortunately, because he's one of my favorites.
I haven't seen the TV show, I'll be honest. Oh no, it's not seen, is it? Well, no,
Yeah,
it
it's
can be seen, I
kind of,
suppose.
yeah, it's on Hyper RPG's YouTube channel. You should give it a
Yeah.
listen. I kind of just turn it on in the background, listen to it as a podcast. It works well.
I've tried watching it or listening to it multiple times, but it's always on a journey, and I always underestimate the journey, and it's always
Yeah.
shorter than it actually is. So by the time I get to a place where I'm going, I always need to stop it, and then by the time that I'm back to it, I forget what's happened. So, but the team as a whole, I think, is really cool. You know, it's the first Power Rangers team that's Greek mythology, and it's a sequel to Time Force. You know, they've got that going for them already. I think that's really cool. I would be fully open for them doing a comic, because that's mainly where I digest all of this stuff.
It would lend itself well to a comic. I agree.
Obviously, they won't adapt the RPG because it's already out there, but I think it would be a fun idea to maybe have a sequel to that. Right, anyway, back to props and stuff. Do you just do the raw prints, or do you just do the finishing product, or how does that work?
The one thing that's kind of cool is we offer, throwing this out there for you actually.
Okay.
So what's kind of cool is that we do offer the ability for these to be printed and not finished. I sell raw prints to people if you wanted to go through and do the finishing, because like I said, that's all elbow grease.
Mm.
If you wanted to go through and do the finishing, then you could. I did that for somebody. It's not on my Instagram actually, but I made a chronomorpher from Time Force and I supplied it. That was my first one I ever sold actually. And I supplied it to a cosplayer and he actually went through and finished it for his Blue Time Force cosplay.
I do like the Chronomorpher. I think that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite morphers, to be honest
It,
with
no, that one's funny because where it goes on like a cufflink, I didn't do it because I didn't do it at the time, like in the sense of I never ventured down it. But there's flexible filament, which is almost like a rubber. And I thought about 3D printing it out of that so you could like form it to your arm.
you. Oh, nice.
I'd probably, now that I look at it, I don't know if I'd do that. I might cast it if I did that, with
Yeah.
the flexible rubber.
At least from my point of view, looking at Facebook groups and all of that stuff, this game of cosplay seems very expensive because you've got places like, or people, I don't know if they're companies or what, but Anarchy, and I suppose they're the most well-known helmet makers, but they can charge, I think, upwards of like £300 for a helmet. Don't quote me. What are your prices like with helmets?
So that kind of it depends on the helmet a little bit. Something like a black Mastodon helmet, that'd probably be like 200 finished, 250 finished, somewhere in that range. Something like the Hyperforce Green, which is a lot more intricate. You have more than just 3 colors. You have little nooks and crannies you have to get into to finish. That'd probably be closer to like the 300 range. I do have like a formula. I don't have it right in front of me. I have an Excel document that I typically use to figure out how much to charge. Being an engineer, I work well with numbers, and that's the best way to approach it. I usually charge based on how much material is used. So to give you a feel, something like a spiral saber, that's not the larger one, but the normal sized one, that's around 250 completely finished. It's kind of not a straight answer, unfortunately, but a lot of it depends on the size of the object and where you want to go with the finishing process, right?
Yeah, that makes sense because it's not a factory mass-produced thing. It's your own
Right.
time, and it takes you a while to do these things. Pricing makes sense. So a customer, from asking you to them receiving it, let's go with let's go with the Hyperforce Green helmet.
I was gonna say you're gonna ask about the Hyperforce screen because that's the one that took me the longest.
Oh, okay, right.
That's okay. No, that's
Okay.
okay. I will answer it. So Hyperforce Green was a special deal. So he hit me up when I first started out. I made the Spiral Saber. Chris posted the Spiral Saber. He hit me up and said, "Hey, I have a Hyperforce Green file. Are you willing to do this?" And I said to him, "When do you need it by? The more flexible you are, the better pricing I can give you." So I spent a year on that helmet and I just kind of worked it in between different props. And I gave him, honestly, I gave him a really good price on that. I think I only charged him like $200 just because he was one of my first customers.
Wow, okay.
And after, that's why my wife looked at me and said, "Holy crap, we need to charge more for this one."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now, and it's very, even like so you've posted the raw print of it.
Yeah,
And I'm zoomed in, and it destroys quality anyway, but I'm looking at it and I can see how intricate it is
it's
with the lines and just everything. It's absolutely mad.
yeah, there's a lot of little nooks and crannies to get in there. Um, sanding wise and paint wise, it was not easy. That's why I said that's probably like a $300 helmet or 350, something around that range. But most of the helmets probably I would say only like 200, 250. What's kind of cool is my wife and I just started actually with that Hyperforce Green. We got what's called PETG. So that's the plastic for the visors. And we actually dye ours. A lot of people use a film. We dye ours because the film was getting, it bubbles and you have to worry about it peeling. But if it's dyed, you don't have any of that to worry about. And it's like embedded inside the, molecules of that plastic. So that's one thing that's kind of better than the average helmet. Sorry, I got on a sidetrack there.
No. You carry on. I think that for people who know cosplay, I think it's very useful for them to know your techniques. And for even people like me who have no idea what cosplay, I mean, I know what cosplay is, but I don't know the amount of
Right.
effort that actually goes into it. It's still interesting to learn this stuff. Yeah, so literally, like, explain away, man. So you mentioned that it took you like did you say a year to do?
That one took me a really long time. That one took me a year. I had that raw print sitting on my table for a very long time. So what happened with that one was when he ordered that, I was working on 2 or 3 spiral sabers for Chris. So we gave Chris the red spiral saber, and then he wanted, ones that were the normal paint job. So I ended up going back and printing 2 more sabers for him and doing those. Something like a spiral saber, I've turned around in as little as 2 months. So that's probably the quickest we could do, is probably about 2 months.
I didn't realize this until just now, but we haven't really spoken about Bloodline of the Grid. You don't know much about it, obviously, because you've said on this podcast that you didn't know that your prop was being used
Yeah, that
until
was kind
that
of funny.
promotional image. So for that prop, how long was that the one that took 2 months to do, or was that a different one?
The red and black one I kind of worked at on my leisure because I didn't have a deadline. I mailed that to Chris. And he didn't know that was coming. That was just a surprise. The normal spiral saber, that is about 2 months to do. Yeah, I think that one took us about 2 months to do. It was funny. We actually went to Ranger Stop to hand deliver those to Chris. Ranger Stop was in Florida, and I live in Massachusetts, so it wasn't too far. So we kind of made a week out of it and vacation down there. I went and we we painted that like the night before our flight. You want to talk about cutting it to the line? And then we bubble wrapped it. And poor Chris, because we painted it and we didn't give it time to dry, one of them actually, you could see like in one spot there was a bubble wrap impression on it. And I said to him, I'm like, because the paint didn't fully cure. And I said to him, like, you can give it back to me, I'll fix it. But he wasn't paying for it, so he didn't care. He was like, no, this is awesome. It's fine. We're gonna leave it. They're actually using that one. If you look at the promotional photos for Bloodline for the Grid, you don't even see it in the images. There's one with his friend DJ Rivers, and he's holding the saber. I think his character's name is TK Johnson. He's using that saber that I hand delivered them at Ranger Stop.
TK Johnson, I believe, is meant to be TJ's son.
TJ,
Yeah,
yeah, TJ and Cassie's, I think.
right. Okay, that's pretty cool. With the Spyro saber that you made, the black and red one, is there
Yeah.
any molding differences to the original, or is it just a different color scheme?
No, it's just a different color scheme. It's actually a bigger saber. It's probably 1.5 times the size. That's actually pretty tricky because the handle wants to break on that because the saber itself is so heavy. So I actually am working on one right now to improve that has a wooden dowel going through the handle, and I think that should work.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with it, because I
Yeah,
would
I don't know.
with Power Rangers, if something is slightly different, it's got a completely different name. But where it's not really officially Power Rangers,
Right.
maybe they'll go along that line of naming it something completely different. I'm not too sure, and maybe it has a completely different purpose. Who knows? But that's exciting.
Yeah, I know they were calling it in early stages, they were calling it the Spiral Reaver. So I don't know if that's still carrying forward or not, but we'll see.
Cool, cool. Right, okay. And is there anything that you're working on at the minute that is not Power Rangers or Star Wars related at all, or
Yeah,
what are you
so
working on at the minute?
right now I'm working on a original called the Theta that my buddy Rando came up with. He actually drew and made a storyline, and he's almost like a common writer mixed with, I don't know if you know Kakaida. It's kind of a tokusatsu from Japan. He's almost like a common writer, almost like a ghost writer kind of character. I'm actually making the helmet. I'm actually making the helmet for him, and I'm right now in the end stages of rendering that. I should actually post some photos to my Instagram now that I think about it. And I'm in the end stages of rendering that. After I'm done with that, I'm moving on to the print. I don't know what his end plans are with it, but I would definitely keep an eye out for a Dethida.
That's cool. So you're through, well, not really through, but people are asking you to do professional stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be able to do an original too. When I do my modeling, a lot of the time I need to match what someone else has done. Although it's creative, it's not as creative as doing original work. So like on Dethida, like me and Rando were bouncing ideas off of each other. I said to him, he gave me all these character turnarounds. None of the turnarounds had anything, had any images of the back of the head or the back of the helmet. So I said to him, like, hey, what are you thinking on the back of the helmet? And he goes, I always thought there'd be like a port or a jack so that he could plug in and charge because he's supposed to be like a robot, I believe. I actually went online and I found the old mouse plugs. I think they were actually called PS2 plugs or something like that. And I modeled that in. So it's really nice to be able to work with someone creatively and expand upon an idea.
Do you see yourself doing more of this stuff in the future? Maybe
Oh,
not for cosplay, but for people's like short films or whatever.
I would love to do that. I definitely foresee myself doing more for cosplay. If the short films come up, that would be awesome because it'd be really cool to see it used in a short film. Ultimately, I don't know if it would ever be able to happen with me living on the East Coast, but if you could ever end up as a prop maker themselves, that would be really, really pretty cool.
But maybe it's something that you can look into in the future because
Yeah.
you've already got the portfolio.
Well, thank
So
you.
you're halfway there now. It's just I suppose putting yourself out there to do that. I
Yeah,
wouldn't know how you would do that, to be honest with you.
me neither. The other thing that's kind of crossed my mind here or there, so I didn't go to school for graphic design. I went to school for engineering. But Hasbro is in Rhode Island and I'm in Massachusetts, so I'm like right there. It crossed my mind to maybe reach out to Hasbro and say, "Hey, I use ZBrush. I think you guys use ZBrush. Is that something you would maybe look into? Would you be willing to maybe work with me?" The thing is I don't have the time working a full-time job to do something like that, so it would have to be down the road, once I'm making enough money that I could focus on this kind of thing.
You don't know what you can get if you don't ask.
That is true.
So just ask and see. All that they can say is no, but the likelihood of that happening is very slim. They'll at least help you with some information that they can give, I would imagine.
That is
But
that is true.
it's the case of talking to the right people, and maybe someone listening can maybe reach out to you and say, "Oh, have you looked down this road or something?"
Mm,
But yeah, like if your stuff is high quality and your customers are really pleased with it, there's no reason for companies to turn you down, really, which is, if anything, it's their loss.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
very valid.
but yeah, where can people find you?
We have an Instagram and we have a Facebook, and both of them are SG Mechanics Props and Prints. The only difference is on the Instagram there's dots between the words.
Well, thank you for coming on. And
Thank you for having me. This was great.
yeah, no worries at all. It was very insightful for me. Thank you for coming on, Rich.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you to Josh Steele for creating the cover art. His Instagram is a basket of kisses, and website is joshsteele.co.uk. Also, a huge thank you to Frankie Waters for putting together the intro and outro. His toy photography Instagram is at figure_lens. You can find me at instagram.com/lightning collection, twitter.com or at PRL Collective. And I will also put a link to the YouTube channel as well, where I upload the podcast, as well as I'm trying to upload more. I'm unsuccessful so far, but I'm planning to partner with a few people and, put some more stuff on the page for you guys. And I think that wraps it up for this week. So thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your day, and hope you have a good week. Bye.
You've just been listening to the Lightning Collective podcast. Have a great day.